Hello, and welcome to the Hustle and Know Entrepreneurial Experience. We are an entrepreneurial book club moving into the podcast world. My name is Julie. I'll be your host this evening, and joining us, we have Joseph Warren, co-owner of Financial Planning HQ, and we got Shawn Townley over here, who's our producer, entrepreneur, consultant, and geek. Today, we're going to be discussing the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Escape the 9-to-5. Live anywhere and join the new rich by Timothy Ferriss. Ooh, Joseph's got the book. Check it out. So without further ado, let's get started. Yeah. Okay. First question, team, everyone. In one word or sentence, give me your synopsis of the book. If you were the author, what is the main point you would want the reader to take away from this book? Ooh, that's the tough one because he had a lot of main points. But try to think of the main points. Who wants to go first?
Go.
Joseph? Okay.
Yeah. So that's true. He did have a lot of main points. We can talk about that a lot later. But I think the main point is like, you're going to die one day. So go enjoy your life and go out there and like live the life of your dreams. If you want to go to Thailand, go to Thailand. You can live a billionaire or millionaire lifestyle without being there yet. And he gives you specific tools on how to do that. And basically what it boils down to is creating systems where you can make money without having to be working all the time, without having to be like this choke point, or I don't know what it's called, like a bottleneck, and automating your money so you have more free time and then you can do the things you want to do. And yeah, I think it makes sense. Rather than, this is way more than one word, rather than just working your whole life so that you can retire and you don't have to work, like, why don't you just like try retirement out early, see if you like it.
Yeah, he calls it mini retirements. Like, why wait till you're like, ready to retire fully? Because then you're going to be bored out of your mind.
Yeah.
So I will piggyback off of that and I'll go next and say that he says, this book is about options. The ability to choose is what real power is about. How to see and create those options with the least effort and cost. So that's what the main point is about. So very similar to what Joseph was saying. Because the logic is like, you don't want to have like real retirement. You're going to be bored out of your mind. Like, why wait? Like, there is never a right time. He says that a lot. Do it now. Start now. And then what I really love is that he gives you a million examples and steps, physical steps in the book. This is what I need. You tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He does that like throughout the entire book. And I absolutely loved it. So he literally gives you the tools in this book to make your own life. And essentially, part of it is like through automation, but there's also a lot of different options. Okay, we'll go into it later, but that's just a little synopsis. Shawn, what do you think? Did we steal all your thunder?
Joseph is absolutely right. We're all gonna die. So if we're gonna die anyway, kind of the Ferris Bueller approach to it, right? Tim Ferriss, Ferris Bueller.
Ooh, clever.
Nice.
If you don't stop and look around every once in a while, you're going to miss it. We're talking about life. And I agree. I've unfortunately watched too many of my friends wait to classically retire only to find out that they have Alzheimer's or die within a couple of years. We work all this time to get to this age that we arbitrarily came up with. And then even if you do it right, you probably spend the first 2 or 3 years really partying. And then you're like, what the hell am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. So don't do it. I mean, I think it's a paradigm shift. I think it's a new way of thinking about work. Work is not meant to take 8 hours a day. He talks about Parkinsons Law and Parkinsons Law and a couple other things in this book. But at the end of the day, I think we're doing it wrong. We've been doing it wrong. I think the Industrial Revolution made us something that we're not naturally. And now we've been doing it so long that doing anything any other way is going to be weird. I think when we were farmers, we got up with the sun and we went to sleep with the sun. We had our rhythms, and we totally wrecked those rhythms. And now without those rhythms, we don't have the comfort, and we see everybody else doing it. So somehow we think we need to do it. So just like being a contrarian in the most important thing, I think we need to be contrarians now and think, hey, maybe I only work 9 months a year, and maybe I live the life I want to live the other 3. Or maybe I just live somewhere else going forward. Why do I have to do it like the Joneses next door?
You don't. That's the point.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great, Shawn. Okay. So then that leads us into tell me what you liked best about the book and then what you disliked about the book.
Okay, I'll start this time.
All right, Shawn.
What didn't I like about the book? I think some of the examples he gave, although there was a plethora of them, I don't think they're always easy. I mean, I think you have to have a strong personality to get started sometimes, and I think sometimes you need help. So maybe even getting some other people to think crazy like you so you don't feel by yourself. A lot of things he was proposing was like, just get out of your own way and just go. And I don't think everybody can do that. I don't think everybody's wired to be that way. I think entrepreneurs kind of are, because you have to be crazy because you're going to be working real hard up front. But, the thing about automation and getting a virtual assistant, I love the idea of getting a virtual assistant. I don't know what the hell I'd give them. So I need to probably stop, eliminate, and do some other things as well. So even though there was a bunch of examples, it wasn't as cut and dry as I thought it could be. On the other hand, I love this book. I mean, it challenges the way you think about traditional work. One of the big problems I had when I started really kind of meditating on this book is because our country is so married insurance benefits to a job, it has really put shackles on us. So even if you want to leave your job, when you talk about what you make and what you actually need to live in other parts of the country or parts of the world, the thing that scares me the most is probably health insurance, especially if you get hurt or sick. Are you going to have enough to be able to take care of that? And so if I can get that obstacle out of my way, I think it's going to be great. I think everything he says is true. It didn't feel like a get-rich-quick book. You're going to have to work your ass off in the beginning. You're going to have to automate. You're going to have to eliminate and do these other things. So I think there's a lot of good stuff there. I gave this to my daughter who's 21, getting out of college. Before she gets locked into this 8 to 5 BS, I said, hey, just look at the world like this for a little bit. Maybe you do a couple of jobs and go live in Greece for a while, before you get tied down, or have kids. But even he had an example of taking kids, having kids and traveling around the world. So just because your parents did it, maybe you shouldn't do it the same way. Getting that freedom of mindset. And this has just been a crazy year. I was trying to apply all that to, does it still work in a COVID type place? Well, we can't travel right now, but when we can travel, I think real estate arbitration, is that the word? Where you trade stuff to work in other places. I think that could absolutely work. I love this book. I like Tim Ferriss. I just want to hang out with a dude and drink a couple glasses of wine.
You have to make time for you. No, I'm just kidding.
Japanese whiskey, I think.
Might be a little difficult because he only checks emails, once a week? No, I'm
You can
just
call him. And he'll respect it.
He doesn't answer voicemails until after his trip. That is very interesting. I wonder what he's doing right now with COVID. And I think that is a very interesting point, everything that you said, Shawn. Like, at first, I was, going to disagree with you and be like, it kind of is cut and dry. Like, he literally gives you steps. But I had not considered the insurance part, and that is a very good point. Because a lot of people need it. There's a lot of people with chronic illnesses. Like, they can't just get up and travel unless they find, a doctor in another foreign country, which they might not trust. You don't have that relationship with them.
He does talk about healthcare arbitrage, though. That was one thing where, other countries have really cheap healthcare.
That's it.
Yeah. And you can get it there for really cheap, pay less than you would in the United States. Because I think we get charged a lot in the United States for our healthcare.
Oh, yeah. We fund the rest of the world in a lot of ways, especially pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think his point, though, about, like you get to make the choice. Like, if you want to travel, take your kids. He gives an example of a woman who took her kids and her husband to travel out of Paris, on a boat for a year. I guess it's very common, he said. But the point is we put these stigmas in our mind, like, I can't do that. I can't just take my kids out of school. You make up all these excuses. And that's also what I really like about the book is after each chapter, he has a Q&A portion where it's more like questions and actions. And so he'll be like, what would you do if you had all the money, time, world, whatever? Mm-hmm. And then list it and really think about it. So Shawn, with you saying, like, I could get a virtual assistant, but I wouldn't know, like, what to even ask him for. Well, he says that in the book. He gives you steps on, like, you need to consider it. Like, think of 5 things that you could give him that would alleviate stuff off your plate that you don't necessarily do, that you're wasting your time in, like busy work, like emails or looking up articles or research. And then 5 fun things that you could assign them, like scheduling lunch appointments. Mm-hmm. I think overall, though, this is going to be definitely a different approach now with COVID happening. Not only with I
need to learn how to eliminate first. The reason why I can't get to there is because, just because you're busy doesn't mean it's important. And if it's not important, you certainly don't want to pay someone else to do it because it doesn't make it important then either. So I think I have to go through the elimination process. So I think this is a phased approach.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And as far as COVID and with kids learning, to learn from basically anywhere in the world, if you have connectivity, I mean, this could be a big game changer. I mean, travel. I mean, you can get to school virtually anywhere. I mean, why not?
Well, yeah, now with depending on how COVID turns out, we're located in San Antonio, Texas. But depending on, like, right now they're kind of holding off schools and saying it should be online virtually until we can get this contained. However, it is up to, like, the school district's discretion right now. But overall, same thing in the workplace. Like, that a part of what the book is he tries to get you to convince your employer to work remotely. That way you can free up your time. And then it gives you tips on how to be more productive. That way you have the ability to still keep your job and work in Italy at the same time. Mm. So, win-win. Win-win. And it's interesting, though, because now I feel like COVID has made it easier for this transition. So we literally read this book at the perfect time. Because beforehand, when people are like their boss is not going to be too happy of them trying to work remote. Well, when COVID started, nobody had a choice. You didn't have a choice. The companies did not have a choice to say no to you. So it's definitely going to be easier to convince your bosses if it comes back, or a lot of companies are just going to be like, we're going to be remotely purely.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's tricky for me, though, because he talks about how, like, you end up being more productive with your time. That way you can be remote, but you're now working 4 times, like you're being 4 or 5 more times like the output as you were versus when you were inside. So, I mean, for me and my company specifically, that's not really too feasible because we track everything by hours. They want to see you work 30 to 40 hours a week. So it's like, even if you are more productive, you're just going to be even more productive.
Ooh, that's old school. That's the problem. Why can't it be results oriented? Why does it have to be you're on a clock? I mean, if you're on the clock and you get 5 minutes worth of crap done, they're still paying you for an hour of work. On the other hand, if I do what I would normally do in an hour in 5 minutes, why shouldn't I reap the benefits? Where's the incentive for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. That is old school. It's kind of that industrial age you were talking about way of thinking. But I've definitely been there. I know how it is.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm still happy. At least we're remote. I love working from home.
It's nice.
For now, until I get sick of it, and then I want to travel. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But it varies per company, as mentioned. Okay, so Joseph, did you say what you liked and disliked about the book? I don't think you did yet.
I don't think I did, no. I think this book is way ahead of its time. That's what I like about it. Like, all these things that he said you could do that people had all these hangups about, like working from home. It's like, yeah, now it's totally makes sense. We all agree you can work from home in most instances. And because it was forced on us almost. And I just really think it's ahead of its time. Like, it's very futuristic. Even with taking the kids out of school, like, kids are out of school right now. A lot of them have been out of school since spring break. And it's not the end of the world. It's not a good thing, but it just shows that there's always a way to do things. If you're forced to do it, either the world like makes you do it, or you could do it on your own and find a way to make it work. And I kind of like that philosophy of like just trying things out and seeing what works. I think we were talking about something similar to that earlier, like I forgot, but there was certain Shawn, you were talking about something like you just try it out and see if it works. I forgot what it was, but I don't know. I really like that philosophy of doing that, like no matter what it is, like with traveling, right? Just like he says, like take a trip, stay in a place in a hotel for like 4 days and then find an apartment there. Like it's kind of like you just kind of plan things as you go. And I like that approach.
No,
what I don't like,
we're horrible. We're horrible at guessing. We always think about the worst case scenario, right? If I lose my job, I'm gonna be homeless. I'm gonna be under a bridge somewhere, right? It's like, okay, the worst that can happen. You take the step, you go out and you do it. You don't like it, you go home, you find another job. What's the big damn deal? You know, I mean, we always make it worse in our heads than it really is. Now, there are things that happen that are catastrophic. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, we're horrible. We're horrible predictors of how things are going to be.
Yeah,
we walk away.
We focus on the worst. Yeah.
Which is why he says, like, literally map out, write it out. What is the absolute worst thing that would happen? And he gives himself an example with his first business that, okay, he might lose thousands of dollars, or okay, he might lose his house, or he might lose XYZ, but he could always get another job like bartending, or he could salvage it, but it might take a couple more months, to getting back to that point. But regardless, there was not any scenario where he couldn't get back right where he left off, even if it took him a little while.
I think that's what TED talk about. Goals shouldn't motivate you. Fear should motivate you. Go out there and find out what your fears are, and then you can design your life around what your fears are, because if you dig into them, you realize it's not as bad as you thought it was.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And also, like, he gives those like fear, what were they called at the end of every chapter? He's like a comfort challenge. That's what
challenges.
Yeah. So one of them was like, okay, like in order to get over your fear of just fear in general, like go into the middle of a public crowded place and just lay down on the floor for like a minute,
3 minutes, 3 minutes,
something like that.
A minute, and then get up like nothing happened.
Exactly. And then if somebody asks you about it, just be like, oh, I was tired, or just play it off. Like, don't tell them, oh, I'm doing a challenge. Like, just and they'll think you're interesting.
Yeah.
But it's very true. We do make up stuff in our head constantly, and I think it's good to, the more you practice, the more you get over it. It's like people who are afraid to pick up the phone and call people. Okay, well, if you had to do that 10 times a day, you're going to get over your fear. It's like, what's so scary about it? Nothing. Worst that could happen is someone says no to you,
Or someone's rude, yeah. But yeah, he talks about that fear setting. Yeah. That's a great exercise, fear setting. Like, and then a lot of things are reversible. Like if you do take a trip and your boss gets mad and you get fired or something, then you can find another job. It's not like all your experience is out the drain and that's the only job you could ever have. But we tend to think that way. Like we think with that scarcity mindset instead of thinking like, there's lots of options out there for me other than what I'm doing currently. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I don't think I said anything that I disliked, but I didn't really dislike anything. I mean, I'm sure if I like dug deep, I could find something. But no, I really liked all his points. And I like how he's like super clever too. Like just one side story. He talks about he's like the wrestling champion in some country. But it's not like he's ever wrestled or anything in his life. But what he did is like there's loopholes. If you read in the rule book, on a technicality, if somebody that you're fighting in wrestling steps out of the rink 3 times, the other person automatically wins. So he did some kind of like doctor supervision tech thing where he made himself like super dehydrated so he could like lose all the water weight, and then as soon as it was done, like he rehydrated as soon as the weigh-in was over. But then he's like, don't recommend that. Like he was under supervision. Don't try that at home.
That's what boxers and UFC fighters do nowadays too. So he was ahead of his time even in that.
Right. Which I mean, essentially is kind of like cheating the system. But I mean, then by the time he hydrates, he's back to his normal weight of whatever, and he's bigger than all other guys now. So he already had that advantage, and all he would do is like push them off, and then he'd win, and end up winning the whole championship. So
I think
I
Shawn's
thought
on
that
mute.
was so
I don't know
clever.
if Shawn was talking. Just sorry.
Did you say something, Shawn?
Oh no, I was just saying that Joseph didn't tell us what he didn't like about the book.
Oh, I didn't like that. There was one thing I didn't like about it. This book, he talks about information overload in the world. This book gives me information overload because there's so many tips and like so many different things. I think he wanted to make sure he covered all his bases, but there's like so many exercises in here that it's not a book that you can just read it and then you know everything you need to know. Like you really have to reference it. Like, if I was going to go traveling, I would have to go back to it. Yeah, because it's hard to keep it on your head.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. I have the audiobook, and I'm like, I need to get the actual physical book because there were so many links that he was saying. He's like www./this/that/.
Oh, that's
I'm all like trying to type it out. It was hard. I'd rather just have the book and like highlight. So I might do that. Anywho, okay. So moving on. What is something that you learned from the book that you didn't know before? And tell me how you're going to apply it to your real life. Who wants to go?
I always volunteer.
Okay, Justin.
So I've read this book before, and it's the reason I started like working from home on Mondays and Tuesdays, doing stuff like that, which has been great recently, or that really prepared me for recent times too. But I think the one thing, it's real simple, is I'm going to make it easy for people to say yes to me. And he has some tricks for that, like some Jedi mind tricks. And basically you ask people, does that sound reasonable? And people don't like to say things are unreasonable, so they'll say yes. And he also talks about how if you want someone to agree to what you want to do, like say you want to like go on a vacation for 2 months and you want to ask your boss that, or you want to trial run working from home, you can say, let's just try it out for a week. And that's kind of like a slippery slope kind of you take advantage of, where that week turns into a month and then you get the freedom that you wanted. So either using the trial period and saying, does that sound reasonable to you? I'm going to start using that.
I was going to say, you're kind of your own boss, Joseph. So you're going to tell yourself to work from home.
Well, I'm trying, just in different instances when I want to get my way. I'm trying to think of when I'm trying to get my way, but.
It's funny. Well, what I'm going to do is Parkinsons Law, where basically a task will swell in perceived importance and complexity in relation to the time allotted for its completion. So basically, which also I have an example of this too, but basically if you give yourself a deadline, because he gives an example of how when he was in college, he was going to interview some CEO. Last minute, they bailed on the interview, so he had 24 hours to finish his paper, and he had nobody to interview. And so he was asking his professor for an extension, and he's like, you're an entrepreneur, like, you'll figure it out. So sure enough, you have the deadline. What was he going to do, fail the class? No. So he persisted, and he found another company to interview and write his full paper and deliver it like a minute before the deadline. So the point is that most often you will end up actually getting better work out of that shorter period of time because you're hyper focused. You're not distracted. You don't have stuff in the background. You can get it done in a lot of time. So I think that's his process in the book as well, on how to work only 10 hours a week versus 40 hours a week. Not only do you do automation, but you hyper focus yourself. Make sure you only do 2 most important tasks a day. Get them done. Just focus on it. Don't multitask. And then you're done. Then you have the rest of the time, free time, to do whatever you want. So I'm definitely going to start doing that because I am definitely a sucker for this. And I have an example that I already did it because this week, I had finished it. And then like 2 days ago, I was looking through my notes because, as you know, like I write a lot of notes, people, on the books. And I was looking through my notes on my iPhone. I'm going to call them out. And all of a sudden, it was gone. All my notes from the books were gone. And that's the worst thing you could do to me, Apple. My heart was broken, and I was so upset, and there was no recently deleted option like on my phone to recover it, so I had to literally listen to the whole thing, I think it's about 7 hours of the book, all within like a day or two. And the point is like if you have a deadline, you're gonna make it work. You're gonna figure it out. If you give yourself more time, then you spread it out, which normally I like to do like an hour a day of listening. But no, I had to do it all, and it was horrible. No, it wasn't horrible, but still it was very stressful. So I don't recommend doing that like too often. But maybe I am going to still apply it though in general. If I have a task or an assignment, Julie, give yourself 1 hour, complete this, don't mess around, like, and then just get it done. So that's what I'm going to do.
Hey, Julie, there's this thing called the internet where people have probably read this book and done their own notes. So listening to the book again seemed kind of...
What they think is important may not be what I think is important.
Yeah. Ooh, good point.
But you know what? That is good. Oh, and that's another thing I loved is that he has throughout the whole book, he's like, oh, look at the 4hourworkweek.com to find all these different templates and you can use. So I'm definitely going to use those too. But I'll include that in the description. Okay, Shawn. So what did you learn? And what are you going to apply?
Some of this stuff I have already applied, but I think it's time to kick it up another gear. I have successfully, I don't work solid 8 hours. I don't think anybody really does. But working from home, you kind of work in fits and starts. Sometimes I'll look up and an hour and a half's gone by, and we call that flow, and it's been called flow with the books that we've been in. But I think there's still a lot of busy work there. I don't think there's a lot of the 80-20. I don't think I'm doing the 20% all the time that's going to get me there. So my task list, I keep kicking things down the road that I know I shouldn't. And in this book, he talks about, if it's been on there too long, that maybe that's where you need a virtual assistant, if it is something truly that needs to happen. So I think I want to look into that. So the elimination piece, trying to make myself a little bit more efficient. We talked about habit stacking. We've talked about this in quite a different nomenclatures. But at the end of the day, some of it's batching, block time, only check email once or twice a day, and he's at once a week or whatever that is, and what's realistic for you, and then pushing the envelope. I think pushing the envelope is probably the bigger deal. If you think you can't get away with it, you should set at the very edge and see if you do get away with that slippery slope that you were talking about, Joseph. Hey, I'm only going to try, a week away and work from, somewhere else. Maybe we'll bump it up to 2, and the next thing you know, half the time you're out of the office. Well, the one example, the guy was like, he figured out that he trained them how to just message him. So he could literally be anywhere in the world. They thought he was like around the corner, and he was literally like halfway around the world. So having the discipline to be able to do that kind of stuff. But I think, continuing to eliminate and work on the 20%, which is kind of a interesting phenomenon, because as you work on the 20%, then the 80% naturally grows back in there, right? So it's continuing to look for those efficiencies. So I'm going to go with elimination, learning things I shouldn't be doing, or getting rid of busy work that feels important but is absolutely not important.
Good, that's impressive. And also, I think near the end of the book, he gives other books that he's read that he likes, and I think that was one of them. Is called The 80-20 Principle, The Secret to Success by Achieving More with Less by Richard Cott, I think is what I wrote down. Yep. So, Shawn, maybe check that out, and maybe that'll help you.
Oh, check that out.
Awesome. Well, was that all of us? Joseph, you went, right? You went first.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any other tidbits, since this was such an awesome book full with so awesome information, is there anything else we'd like to add?
I think he's more describing a lifestyle, really. That's what this book is about. It's like about a lifestyle that you can live, where you're not like so caught up in like identifying yourself with your job or what you do for work, but like living your best life, basically. I guess that's what they call it nowadays.
Right. That's true. Yeah, Shawn's rolling his eyes.
No. Those mini. I hate the term mini retirement because it just sounds so bogus. But I mean, really just not waiting to do what you think you're going to do later. Our future selves, we lie to our future selves all the time. We're constant. We're horrible at, yeah, I'll absolutely start eating better tomorrow. I'll absolutely start doing things better 6 months from now. I mean, I'm pretty sure I can save up money to retire when I'm in my mid-50s. I mean, we're just horrible liars to ourselves. Forget the lying. Just start living now. After COVID, of course.
I like that. A quote that he says is that what we fear doing most is usually what we most need to do. So maybe that'll help you in your priority list. Work isn't the end goal for this book. Living more and becoming more is the goal. Because he says a lot of times people are depressed because they have too much idle time. That's why he's saying, like, retirement is bogus. Like, who actually retires? And then what? And then you get bored out of your mind and they find another project or whatever. That's his whole point.
Real enemy is boredom.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Boom. Okay, we'll end on that note. Thank you so much for joining us to our Hustle and Know entrepreneurial experience. You can find more about the author and his social media handles and all that in the description. And don't forget, hustle beats talent when talent doesn't hustle. Bye. See you next time.